Welcome to this lesson on performance analysis and target population analysis. As a preface to this lesson, let me say there are many views, opinions, and methodologies used with performance, needs analysis, and population analysis. I'm presenting many of the tools and techniques used by Robert Mager and Ruth Clark, as I found them to work well. In Lesson 1, we looked briefly at criterion reference instruction made popular by Robert Mager. In this lesson, we go back to CRI to consider some of the methods in more detail, including performance analysis and target population analysis. We'll also look at several useful tools you can use as you plan your analyses. The Mager methodology is very concerned with performing proper analysis prior to development. It's important to note that the main ingredient in your analyses includes asking questions, lots of questions. This lesson will provide a framework for you to determine what questions to ask. In the analysis and design phase, the critical aspects include a needs analysis, but notice in this model there's also a precursor, a performance analysis, that seeks to identify the problem and what kind of solution will solve it. The performance analysis often leads to a needs analysis where data is then collected specific to a training or e-learning solution. And a target population analysis that seeks to understand the characteristics of the audience for which the solution applies. The degree to which you perform any analysis depends on the complexity of your project, the time frame, the funding, executive sponsorship, resources and tools, and a host of other factors. It is critical for success that some analysis take place prior to design and development. We will focus on performance analysis as it leads to all other analyses in the end, and also target population analysis. Then we'll take a look at the last three: task analysis, objectives, and assessment in next week's lesson. This statement by Robert Mager is a classic. The rationale is very true. We often jump to conclusions when it comes to training solutions. As a precursor to doing anything, performance analysis will pay great dividends to you as an instructor or instructional designer. Performance analysis focuses on these categories and questions as shown here. You may want to pause the presentation to review them. So where does needs analysis fit in? Alison Rossett, author of the book First Things Fast, differentiates performance analysis from needs analysis or needs assessment. In performance analysis, you seek to get to a root cause, either a performance problem or perhaps a missed opportunity. In doing so, you may frequently find that training is not the solution at all. If your performance analysis does point to a training need, you then proceed to a needs analysis where you gather data on your target audience and their training needs. You gather such data in order to inform the direction of your training program. In needs assessment, it's typical to perform field interviews and focus groups to gather your data. Again, asking questions is central to the methodology. We will focus further on the performance analysis in this lesson. To analyze a performance problem, Robert Mager created a very useful flow diagram. Here's an excerpt from that diagram. At the outset, it's important to describe the problem in performance terms. You should be able to describe the desired behavior in contrast to the exhibited behavior. Then you determine how to close the gap, and training might be only one solution, or maybe not at all. Two key questions here that might uncover a training need are: is there a knowledge deficiency? And is there a skill deficiency? Training organizations are asked to do a lot of things, but only if the answer to these two questions result in a resounding yes do you need to even think about developing a training program. Otherwise, the solution is found somewhere else. Another way of saying this is the problem a can't do or a won't do? If it's the latter, you're not dealing with a training issue. The full diagram is posted in this week's resources. As you review the full diagram, think of how you might use it as the basis of a performance analysis. Also, determining if e-learning is the solution comes later. Here's an excerpt of a performance management template related to the Mager flow diagram. It can help you systematically determine the performance problem. The full template is posted in this week's resources. Once you know the solution is training, you should perform a target population analysis. What's the purpose of a target population analysis? Well, it's used to collect information about who will attend the training. A target population analysis yields two types of information. First, it will help decide who needs training and how a specific course must be customized to meet the participant's needs. And second, it will identify what class groupings might be appropriate. Take note of all the questions posed here and consider adapting the questions for your own target population analysis. To conduct a target population analysis, you collect information in these categories. Use at least 3 of these categories to gather enough information to make appropriate customizing decisions. All 6 categories do not have equal importance for each training solution. Decide what you want to find out about this particular group that can help you make content and enrollment or grouping decisions. Information is best collected from interviews, observations, or from existing information. I mentioned earlier you need to ask lots of questions. Here are more questions recommended by Mager. You can adapt these questions as needed for your own projects. And here's yet more questions, a continuation of the set of questions that Mager recommends for target population analysis. Now I want to share with you a methodology we use at Washington Mutual. It combines elements of a performance needs analysis and a target population analysis in order to recommend a solution, whether training or otherwise, to internal clients. To frame it up a bit, we had a process challenge at WAMU. We had multiple requests for training coming in daily, and we had no way of determining if they were based on legitimate training needs or not, and had no effective method to prioritize competing requests. Consequently, we took on more projects than we could handle. We created some programs that were not needed or not effective, and we drained our internal resources trying to fulfill the never-ending requests. Does that sound familiar? We assembled a cross-functional team to re-engineer our development process, which was loosely based on ADDIE. Using tools adapted from Robert Mager and Ruth Clark, we created a streamlined front-end process that helped us manage the request load. The process was called the intake, which I alluded to in the last presentations. But it was really a consolidated combination of performance analysis, needs analysis, and target population analysis. The word intake was more or less a marketing term to get the thing approved. I'll share with you some of the major tools we created that we used in this process. Here's an example of the primary tool we used at WAMU called the Intake Questionnaire. It consists of an interview form broken into 13 categories, each with multiple questions. Some questions target performance issues, others target needs, and yet others target the audience. The question categories are business initiative, or what's driving the request, and what part of the business, performance issues, audience questions, knowledge and skills questions, technology and resource issues or questions, process and product questions, urgency, existing documentation and training, predicted shelf life, further contacts, and initial meeting follow-up. After each requester was interviewed using this form, the management team from our learning services met to review the questions and answers. We would reconnect with the interviewee to clarify the answers as needed. The training team would then propose a solution based on the client's input. Many times the solution was not training, but another more cost-effective and more efficient solution. We then forwarded a solutions document to the client with our recommendations. Any resulting training or e-learning projects were then scheduled and tracked until they were complete. A blank version of this template is posted in this week's resources, along with an example of an actual process that was completed that used the tool. Review these as examples of a consolidation of performance, needs, and target population analysis. You might want to borrow items from them for your own class assignment or for your own workplace projects. If the performance problem indicates a training need, another thing you'll have to determine is your strategy on how the training program will be delivered. Often clients rush to the conclusion that a particular delivery, instructor-led, virtual, webinar, or asynchronous, is the solution. But further analysis is required to help you settle on a proper delivery solution. This matrix, which is an excerpt, depicts the rationale behind choosing a delivery solution across three broad areas: e-learning, virtual classroom, or instructor-led classroom. It compares each delivery solution point by point, including audience, advantages, disadvantages, time to develop, scale, resources, content, and assessment. The complete matrix is available for you to use in this week's resources. So how do you know the solution might be e-learning? If you're not sure, here's an e-learning performance support decision matrix you can use as a tool. The matrix contains a set of criteria that can help determine if e-learning or a different type of approach would work. Once you're done with your performance and target population analyses, you might then use this matrix. How would you use it? Well, first you consider your proposed program and content. You start at the top of the page and answer each question in the first table, putting a 1 in the column next to your answer. The item with the highest score in the table becomes your recommended type of delivery. The complete matrix is available for your use in this week's resources. In this week's activities, you will create questions for performance analysis and a target population analysis on a particular topic. You can choose from the topics listed here: how to escalate a call, which would involve a call center environment; job interview skills, which would be human resources related; or choose from the sample learning topics or modules, which is a document attached to the assignment, which includes 16 possible topics. It's included in the assignment area for week 2. In this lesson, we've explored performance, needs analysis, and target population analysis, and some useful tools you can use to help you with your analyses. As a follow-up, now go to the course shell in Moodle and do the items listed in this week's activities, week 2. Also look under resources for articles and links that provide more in-depth information about this week's topics. Look in the discussion forum for this week's questions. Please post to the discussions by offering your response to the questions and also your response to your fellow classmates' posts.